Welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome back to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm thrilled you're joining us today, and we are going to be talking about hope and something you might not have heard about before, bioelectric medicine, how to slow, stop, and even reverse dementia. And I can't wait to introduce you to our guest. But first, I always like to point you in the direction of Alzheimer's Speaks main website. There we have one whole section just filled with free educational resources that I urge you to take advantage of. You'll also find our book tab with Betty the Bald Chicken, Lessons in How to Care, which is a wonderful children's book, but it's good for everyone at every age. And it's not dementia specific. So whenever you don't feel like you don't fit in or you don't belong, it will help kind of calm you down and sort through your life, what you can do for yourself, what you can do for others, how you want others to treat you. And then again, I urge you to go to Dementia Map, which is our global resource directory, where you'll find over 150 different resources, along with a blog, a glossary of terms, an events calendar, and now a shop. So check out dementiamap.com as well. Let's go ahead and introduce you to our guest and get this show on the road. Well, Guy, I'm so excited to have you with us today. It was such a pleasure to meet you in person the other week. And so I'm thrilled to bring you to our audience to learn more about your work. But I'm going to have you introduce yourself because you can sum it up much better than I can.
Well, thank you, Lori. It's a delight to be here with you. And yes, it was great to meet, have lunch. It's not often that the person that I'm going to chat with on a podcast lives here in the city, and we can do that. So it was a delight. So my name's Guy Odishaw. One of my companies is Cerebral Fit. I also have Bhakti Brain Health Clinic and Minnesota Brain Health Clinic that focuses specifically on dementia through the Bredesen protocol. But my background, I probably started a little over 30 years ago. Most of my time has been spent more on the orthopedic side, so working with traumatic injury, so physical injury, traumatic brain injury, and then trauma more broadly defined in just kind of psycho-emotional trauma. So that's been my primary area. But then maybe 12 years ago, I got into what's called bioelectric medicine, and that again was primarily on the orthopedic side, but then slowly kind of moved across more into the specifically brain health. And maybe the last 5 years, I've been specifically working in the area of brain health, and now have 3 brain health clinics where we use primarily bioelectric medicine as our approach to help what we like to say is kind of regulate dysregulation in the brain and the nervous system. Really, we mostly think of kind of peak performance. How do we optimize the organ and the mechanism to work, more efficiently and over a life course. So along the way, besides being a clinician, I've also, helped start integrative clinics. So I started at the University of Minnesota, opened an integrative clinic there, was there for about 8 years. Then stepped out of that, started my own integrative clinic, grew it to be one of the largest integrative clinics in the country. And now have set that aside and really focusing more on kind of the in-home care side as for many of the conditions, specifically Alzheimer's dementia. How do we deliver more effective, more efficient care? And that's going to be with devices in home. And so that's now the main focus of my personal practice, but also of the clinic.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of dementia? I always ask every guest if they've been personally touched in their own family or circle of friends. Do you mind sharing with us?
Well, absolutely. So I think probably the first time that this arose in my own life was when my dad's mom was diagnosed and ended up actually living a very long time, something in the neighborhood of 20 years with dementia. But we didn't know then what we know now. And so it was just kind of a mystery in terms of what happened. But now looking back, it's obvious, what had been the case. So that was my first encounter really as a child, kind of going through that experience. But then, more recently in my life, I had a brother-in-law who had a very aggressive form, and I would say over about a period of 5 years, rapidly declined and passed. I had a stepdad who also had a different version, but a very rapid version, and over a very few years, declined and passed because of the disease. And then, some concerns with my wife and some early onset, and I would say that's a large part of what got me focused on this was what was unfolding with her and the question of what can we do about it. And if you're on the allopathic side, the answer to that is not much. And so that was where kind of Bredesen protocol came in and the bioelectric came in, and it's been a life-changing experience for her, but also for us as a couple. The direction we were headed in, we are not headed in that direction now, and that's just been grace, just pure grace.
Wow, that's very interesting. Well, I'm wondering, I know you put together kind of a short little video that you can describe because a lot of people, myself included, before we met, I wasn't really sure what bioelectric medicine really even was. And do you want to go ahead and share the screen and tell us a little bit more about that, and then I can pick your brain.
Absolutely. So this is about 10 years old in terms of research, but what it shows is something that in many forms of traditional medicine has been held for thousands of years. The idea of kind of like, say, energy work, whether it's qigong or tai chi or acupuncture or Ayurvedic medicine, it doesn't really matter the traditional system. They hold within them this idea that there's an energetic component. But in Western medicine, we just haven't had that. We've been anti that. We've been very much, no, it's about the material, what you can see and touch, and and so this research coming out of Tufts University, and it has then gone on to show some really amazing results, what they're doing with this. But this is some of the early time. What we're going to see is it's going to look like we're seeing embryogenesis in a tadpole, so the formation of a tadpole face. But we're not actually looking at the anatomy. This is the big thing. What we're looking at is the electromagnetic template for the face before the cells are there. That's the amazing part. Like, that's the mic drop moment of this video, and why I show it is it shows something that prior to this in Western medicine, we just didn't have a concept for. We were anti, and then along comes evidence to say this exists. So that's what we're going to watch here. So if you watch this more middle one, the lighter colored one, you'll see right there begins what looks like the dividing line of the face, the gills, the mouth, the nose, the eyes, and then that face kind of turns to the side. Do that one more time. So the thing to keep in mind again is this is not the anatomy. What you're seeing is the electromagnetic field for the future face. So as cells gravitate to those regions, that electromagnetic field has information in it that will tell those cells what to be. You're an eye cell, you're a mouth cell, you're a gill cell, and that we now have multiple time reproduced, validated science to say that before there is physical structure, there's an electromagnetic template that organizes that. And we actually know that even after there's structure, there's an electromagnetic template that is continuing to tell that tissue what to be, how to be, what to do. So there's, in a way we think about it, is like local mind, right? So like that's an intelligence that is telling the material biology what to do. And this is the exciting part that's happening in bioelectric medicine is so we're fairly used to pharmacological medicine, so chemical medicine. What we're not really used to is bioelectric medicine. So in a simple form, we could say we are electrochemical beings, right? Now we're more than that, but just to kind of keep it simple for this conversation, we're chemical electric beings. We're very used to chemical medicine pharmacies. The electrical side, although it's been around as long, it just got eclipsed by the advent of pharmaceutical medicine, in the sense of like better living through chemistry, and we found the answer and it's all going to be good from here, and it just chewed up all the bandwidth. But kind of silently on the side, bioelectric medicine has continued. And I would say what we're seeing right now is some significant breakthroughs in the application that are going to be pushing it forward. And this is going to become as common as the idea of going to the pharmacy and getting a pill, that one would engage on a bioelectric medicine through a device or whatever form that particular treatment's going to take. But again, the Tufts University, Michael Levin there, one of the leaders in bioelectric medicine, what he's showing that he can do with bioelectric medicine, kind of regenerative medicine. So here's an example that pertains very much to what we're going to talk about today. So this is still in a frog model, but they're evolving it up they're in mammals now. But in a frog, they introduce a teratogen into the developing frog that basically causes brain damage. So you get an adult frog with a non-optimally functioning brain. MRI scans to show the damage done. He then uses bioelectric medicine to initiate, kind of what he talks about it, kind of the algorithm for regenerate the brain, right? So the same biological process that in development developed the brain, he's able to turn that on again. And so over a period of months, that frog regenerates its brain, comes back to being a normal functioning frog that can be trained like their other frogs could be trained. It can show all the functioning as expected for an adult frog. And so he's able to show experimentally that you could do that. And he's done that with limbs, getting animals, or mostly amphibians, that don't regenerate a limb. So this idea of regenerative medicine on the bioelectric side, again, is just absolutely mind-blowing what is happening. And he's really turning biology on its head. A lot of things that were believed to not be possible, he's showing that is absolutely possible. His research in cancer is amazing. It's going to change the way cancer is being treated. It's even changing the way it's being conceptualized. So we're leveraging a part of that in what we do, using devices to change the bioelectric gradient at the level of the cell to move cells, tissue, organs in the direction that we want them to go, instead of in the direction that we don't want them to go, to move towards health and regeneration as opposed to disease and degeneration.
So today, we're talking, our audience is primarily people with dementia, but they are dealing with all kinds of different things, as are their care partners. Can your equipment and your medical model, can it work, let's say, on, I know so many people struggling with immune system disorders and stuff right now, and help balance those types of things out?
Absolutely. I would say, so my largest client base for sure is dementia, then maybe Parkinson's. But right after that is kind of what you're suggesting, kind of more autoimmune condition. And as we learn more about autoimmune conditions, we're more and more chronic disease is being swept under that umbrella. Mm-hmm. And so it just means there's more and more things in that category that we're treating. But yes, I use different technology than what we use when we're treating dementia. I'm going to be using more kind of frequency specific microcurrent. We're treating, the body more than the brain. We're, kind of going after the immune system as a form of distributed intelligence in our body, and how do we correct the information processing within the immune system that is kind of lost the plot. But that is the primary approach, is to be able to address that information processing. And if we can get that sorted out, we see wholesale change in conditions that otherwise, again, allopathic medicine just really hasn't found very workable solutions for.
To me, I find this really interesting because to me, energy is just fascinating. I mean, we've all had somebody walk into a room and we can feel their energy without a word, without anything. And we all know that happens, but we kind of have poo-pooed that and never thought, well, it could be deeper and bigger and better and more helpful. And not too long ago, I interviewed a gal who's working for a company called Eugerian, and they're getting different products for dementia. And one of the products, and I cannot remember the name of it, but it's like a football, and two people hold on to it, and up to 10 people can touch these other people, and it will change the sound depending on how many people are touching this thing. And it's just fascinating to me how that can work. And to me, it's almost like a diagram in real life of that energy spread and what it does with all of that. So like I said, I'm really, really interested to learn more about what you're doing. We're hearing more and more about the autoimmune system in dementia, and that becoming part of the whole research with everything as well. So this is just wonderful. Can you tell us, how did you get started in all of this? Usually there's one or two things that just kind of push you forward and go, no, this is the direction you need to go. And you've done a lot of things with all your entrepreneurship in different areas.
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, because I had a large integrative clinic at our peak, we had 31 providers from across the spectrum of healthcare. I just had an opportunity to encounter many different forms. And we would do weekly case studies. So we get together and we'd have our MDs and our chiropractors, our nurses, our mental health providers, our acupuncturists, our massage therapists, our Reiki providers, our coaches, our physical therapists, you name it. Just this great expanse of providers in a room kind of talking about their cases. And so I was vaguely familiar with I didn't know the term bioelectric medicine, but I was aware there were things like TENS. We put little sticky pads on, makes your muscle jump, things like that. I was aware that existed, but it just didn't hold interest for me. But we had a provider who was doing microcurrent facials, right? So microcurrent therapy for aesthetics. And I just, I would see his clients come and go. And one day, one particular person just caught my attention, and I was just like, pardon me, for interrupting. This is very rude, but I just can't believe I saw you go in. I see you're coming out. The transformation is astounding. Like, what happened? She was very kind. She took it as a compliment, and then just told me her journey of going from kind of standard aesthetics, Botox, fill, all of that, into the world of bioelectric medicine for aesthetics, and how she was no longer doing the other stuff and she was just doing the bioelectric medicine, and just how much better she looked and felt. And she was utterly radiant. But again, the difference was the radiance that she walked in with and the radiance she walked out with was striking. So that got me interested to just say, if something could change somebody that much, I'm interested. So then, just through a series of coincidences, I had another bioelectric medicine provider join my clinic, and I watched her. So she also was on the orthopedic side, and she would fill the waiting room from morning to night. She would have a waiting room full of people, and I had a large clinic. She would fill as many rooms as were available. She might have 6 rooms going or 8 rooms going. And if there was somebody standing around that wasn't, like, if there was a doctor who wasn't seeing somebody, she'd grab them and drag them in and say, stand here and, press this button when it beeps or what, But what I saw were just miracles happening. People coming in with a walker and then walking out without their walker, and the son that brought them is carrying their walker as their father is walking out. And one of the most attention getting for me was this gentleman so Suzanne was the lady who was the provider in my clinic and eventually became my first teacher in bioelectric medicine. But this client of Susan's who I met, but his story before this was he was Suzanne's accountant, and she kept talking to him about his foot. He's diabetic. His foot was going sideways on him. He kept saying, no, I'm under care. I'm fine. Well, he calls her the night before he's supposed to have his foot amputated. And she has videos of this guy's foot. It's just a big swollen red mass. You can see the black dotted lines for the surgery. She works on it all night. By morning, it's halfway to looking like a normal foot. He agrees to cancel the surgery. She works on him for the next day, back to a normal foot. I meet him 6 years after that. He still has his foot. He's a loyal client of hers. But that was one of the most remarkable transformations that I had seen in at that point, probably my 20 years of being in healthcare. But then I watched her, over the time that she was with us, do things that seemed miraculous every day in the clinic. We just got to call them everyday miracles. And that's what fueled me. I was like, okay, whatever I was doing before, and it's not like how I was working with clients wasn't helpful. This is more helpful. And that's where I made a fairly wholesale change from what I'd been doing into bioelectric medicine. And like I said, that kind of led today where we do high-end neuroimaging, neurofeedback, neurostimulation, neuromodulation, have gotten a little bit into device manufacturing. And so it really, for me, was saying we can change healthcare, the delivery of healthcare in a just fundamental way. And one of the ways was, as technology got better and we didn't need to have the big, $25,000, brick that we used in the clinic to deliver this. Now we have something that's the size of a smartphone and costs $2,400. So, massive change in cost and portability. Now I can send to my client a device that they use at home that is 10 times better than what I used to use in the clinic and got good results with, but I can deliver that to them at home. So for the cost of, people can rent the device. So $75 a week to rent a device, $75 in the clinic for a treatment. One treatment, $75. The person at home can treat themselves, let's say twice a day, every day. So 14 treatments for the same cost, and they get to do it at home without a trip to the clinic. It's just a more efficient way to deliver healthcare. So that's, but yeah, it started with those two experiences in my own clinic, just seeing things that I couldn't otherwise explain.
Wow. Well, and to see that big of a change that fast too, because usually when you go to the doctor, it's like, well, we'll see you in a couple months. Come on back. We'll see how you're doing type deal. Have you found, does this work? I also have a lot of friends with like back pain and neck pain and things like that. Can you rejuvenate things in that area as well?
Absolutely. So that's again my biggest background is on the orthopedic side. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I love is so nerves are electric, right? And so they take to microcurrent therapy or bioelectric medicine very quickly. So we can often change nerve function quickly. Now, not always, but often. So I've had clients who've maybe had a back surgery, and kind of regardless of whether the back surgery went well or didn't, it's like that's not the thing, is they were left with some symptoms. Mm-hmm. And either symptoms that were a remainder from why they went into the surgery or symptoms that came from the surgery. And then be able to take those people and in a relatively short period of time, get them symptom free, get them back their mobility and their quality of life. And largely that's just because there was irritation or inflammation in the nervous system that the surgery itself couldn't resolve. But using microcurrent therapy, we're able to get that nerve to quiet down, and relatively quickly symptoms are gone, and they're happy, and again, quality of life. So there's certain conditions that respond very well to it, and then other conditions that are either not going to respond or slow. But absolutely, the orthopedic space is fantastic for bioelectric medicine, and that's whether we're doing microcurrent or light therapy. It's really wonderful to see what can be done again in that same model where we're able to treat people at home without necessarily them having to come to the clinic and have the cost of that, but also the impingement on time.
Yeah, well, I think of things like thyroid disorders, or even diabetes with medicine where it's life threatening and people are like, I don't know if I can afford my medication, or will it be available? We saw a lot of that during COVID. And boy, if some of this can come into play, what a difference that'll make in so many ways.
Yep, absolutely. Many of the chronic conditions. So we were talking, today to talk about dementia, but think something like macular degeneration, which we kind of call dementia of the eye. The back of the eye, the macula is really, we think of it as nerve tissue, but it's really brain tissue, right? It's that interface, and so we can succumb to the same process. And allopathic medicine would say there's no treatment for macular degeneration, but we have about an 85% success rate treating macular degeneration. And again, we're just using bioelectric medicine. In many cases, what's happened in most degenerative diseases, again, is this idea that the tissues and structures have either become devitalized. So let's say mitochondria are either lacking in number or lacking in function. So the tissues just aren't getting the energy that they need, literally are not getting the fuel to do what they need to do, and they start to break down. So if we do nothing other than just get the mitochondria functioning optimally again, that's a fundamental change to the vitality of the tissue and the tissue to be able to do what it's supposed to do. But the other piece is, again, that idea that there's an intelligence in the tissues and the structures. There's a local intelligence that is kind of telling them what they're supposed to be doing. If that intelligence starts to degrade, well, then the tissues aren't getting the right information. They aren't being told how to do what they're supposed to do. And the analogy I use is, if you, for those of us who are old enough to remember radios where you actually had to tune the dial. Yep. So if it was like just a little bit off, so it was staticky, and you just miss a few words in the story, it didn't take very long, and you were lost. You didn't know what was being said to you over the radio. And it's very much the same in the body. As that local intelligence degrades and it can't give the cells clear information, they just lose the story. They lose the plot. And so using bioelectric medicine, if we can restore that communication of what are those cells supposed to be doing, well, then they just get back to it. Just like if you turn that dial and you get it a clear channel, you can pick up the story like, oh, that's what they're talking about. I thought it was this, it's not, it's this, and away you go. Same thing with our cells and our tissues and our organs.
Well, let's talk about Cerebral Fit and what that all is. What are you doing with that company?
Sure. So Cerebral Fit is really kind of somewhat was a response to my brick and mortar clinic and my Minnesota Brain Health Clinic, which is our Alzheimer's dementia clinic, using the Bredesen protocol. And what we were seeing was the efficacy of the devices. That even though we were doing diet and lifestyle and supplements and medication if needed, but mostly the Bredesen protocol is diet, lifestyle, and supplements, with a little bit of bioelectric medicine added in, because Dr. Bredesen really did create a comprehensive program. I have all the respect in the world for him and his program. The bioelectric medicine side was always just kind of a, oh, and there's this. It's off on the side. Most clinics who do a Bredesen protocol don't even do the bioelectric medicine. So what we wanted to do was CerebroFit, where we put the bioelectric medicine primary. Like, do we do diet and lifestyle and supplements? Yes. But on the CerebroFit side, that's more of a, oh yeah, there's this other thing you can do. But the big player is the bioelectric medicine, the devices. And the reason I say that is what we saw in our other clinics when we were doing diet and lifestyle, or somebody would come to us and they were doing diet and lifestyle. So they're doing that well, they're doing the supplements, maybe it needs a little tweaking. The people who also did the bioelectric medicine did much better than the people who were just doing diet, lifestyle, supplements. So it started to, like, the data started to show us that the bioelectric medicine is doing a significant amount of heavy lifting here. And so the question is, what would happen if we just did that? And then sure enough, you get patients who want to do the minimum. They maybe don't want to change their diet. That's a big deal. They're maybe resistant to the lifestyle changes, right? They've never exercised in their life and they don't plan to start. So you kind of get that group of people, which is a surprisingly large group of people. But if you say, well, here's what you need to do, put this device on, sit here in the chair, watch TV, and you're doing a treatment, there's a swath of those folks who will say yes to that. They won't do anything else, but they'll do that. So that's what we saw, was for the folks who were willing to do the devices, but not the diet and lifestyle, they did better than our people who were doing just diet and lifestyle and supplements.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so that was so we don't not do kind of the Bredesen thing, the diet, lifestyle, supplements on the CerebroFit side. We just don't put that center stage, and we talk mostly about the devices. And then of course we support people to make that whole change, because it's all important. But yeah, so that was really the development of it, was just seeing what was having an impact in our patient population.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to shout out to our audience. If you just tuned in now, you're going to want to rewind and hear everything that's been said. We've been talking with Guy Otashar, who has CerebroFit and Bhakti Wellness Center as well. And it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation, and we are still going strong. You can always go to his website, CerebroFit. You can email him at godashar@cerebralfit.com. And you can also visit his other sites. We'll have all of that in the show notes, so don't worry if you don't have a pen and paper handy. We also have a wonderful list that Guy has given us regarding research papers and lectures you can watch, and some of his favorite videos as well. So there's just so much to learn, and I'm sorry we only have an hour to do it in. I can't believe how long we've been talking already, and I feel like I could talk with you all day. That's how I felt when we went out to lunch too. I find this just fascinating. Well, is there anything more that you wanted to tell us about what bioelectric medicine is?
Maybe what we could do is go from being general to the specific. And I just kind of name the devices and put some particulars on this for people. Kind of for our dementia clients, our primary recommendation is what we call the CerebroFit Complete. So this is a near infrared helmet, audiovisual entrainment device, and a nasal laser. So those are so 3 separate devices, but we put them together in a package, and we encourage people to use them kind of simultaneously, right? So your treatment time is efficient, but we're approaching the brain in a number of different ways simultaneously. And so I'll just say a little bit about it. So we've got the near infrared helmet. We use a 1070 nanometer, which is just a particular wavelength of near infrared light. And it's kind of where the science is pointing right now. I'm not wedded to there being a magical type of light that does it. That you'll see variety in the industry. People will talk about 810 or 850 or 1070, and it's far too technical to talk about like why those matter in different circumstances. So I am agnostic. Something is better than nothing, and so we don't, I don't want people to get bogged down in the minutia and let that be a barrier to starting. So our helmet is the 1070 currently. And so putting near infrared light into the brain, what are we doing? We're increasing mitochondrial activity, which is increasing ATP, which is energy. And that just has such a significant effect on the aging brain. Just again, the analogy I use is money. And if you're living on a fixed income and your fixed income is getting less and less each year, and your expenses are staying the same or getting more, but your income is getting less, that's not a good situation to be in. And that's essentially what's happening in the brain. The brain's energy production is getting less and less each year. Our number of mitochondria drop off considerably as we age. And so to be able to come in and give the brain more energy, it's a lot like if somebody came along and just gave you more money. There's all kinds of things that you haven't been doing that you would be doing if you had the money. And that extra money is helpful. Same thing. Give the brain more energy, it starts to get back to its maintenance schedule. It starts to work on repair. And if there's enough energy, it'll start working on regeneration. So that also turns out that mitochondria plays a huge role in cell signaling. So cell-to-cell signaling. And that's part of that local mind, or the communication within the tissue and within the organ that reminds the whole milieu of what's the story, like what are we up to, what are we doing here, right? So the mitochondria play an enormous role in that, maintaining the story, the information. And so getting those up and running better, faster, optimized helps with the energy and with the information processing that's happening. So then the next thing is reducing inflammation. So as you had mentioned earlier, so inflammation plays a big role in dementia. And so if we can downregulate inflammation without putting a drug in, then that's just a win. We're not putting a toxic drag on the system. Even if there's a big benefit to it, there's still maybe in some cases kind of a toxic load. So if we can reduce inflammation without that, that's a win. The infrared light is very good at that. So then we do other things like increasing nitric oxide, which is good for circulation and perfusion, getting more blood in and deeper. So that's good for bringing nutrients, but it's also good for taking waste materials out. Balancing reactive oxygen species, which is a free radical, which too much causes oxidative stress, not enough interferes with cell function. So we want to have that balance. Near infrared is great at balancing that. Oh, and there's a long list. I could go on and on and on of just about the benefits of near infrared light. They're vitalizing. That's the key thing for people to know is it's an essential nutrient. Near infrared light is an essential nutrient. We evolved in the sun. Our biology is supposed to get large doses of near infrared light every day. But good research, it's been done for a while, but there's an article that came out maybe a year ago showing that modern humans get about 7% of the near infrared light that our ancestors used to get. And so you can imagine any essential nutrient. And again, we talked about, I used the metaphor of the income. If you lost 93% of your income, but still tried to maintain the same lifestyle, like you couldn't do it, right? You just couldn't do it. And so that's a lot what it's like with our bodies. We've taken away 93% of this essential nutrient by living indoors, putting clothing on, spending most of our time in artificial light, and, in the last several decades, avoiding the sun as if it was a danger to us because of melanoma. And right, it turns out like no, that's actually not true. It's essential. So what we're doing is taking a particular wavelength of light that is in the sun, and we're giving the brain just that wavelength. None of the harmful ones, the UVs, the blues, we're giving the brain just the nutrient. And that's why we see all these benefits, is the organ is just simply malnourished. And so when we feed it, it just takes it in and puts it to use and is restorative to function. So the other thing the helmet does is it does pulse light, which means we can do entrainment. So we can get neurons to pulse in the brain wave frequency. So we talk about this as, getting the brain to talk to itself in its own language. So in delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. And what we find in most all neurodegenerative diseases, in dementia, is a massive drop off in gamma, a particular brainwave that has a very particular function. And so one of our treatments is to use the helmet with pulsed light in the gamma range. MIT came out with a study maybe 4 years ago now, showing the effects of 40 hertz flickering light on reducing amyloid plaques in the brain and all kinds of positive benefits. And so we're leveraging that research to be able to use the helmet to do that as well. So that's the helmet. Then we have the audiovisual entrainment, which is these funky glasses with blinking lights, and headphones with beeping noises or binaural beats, and ear clips that can do transcranial stimulation. So 3 forms of what's called neuromodulation in one device. And this really lets us primarily engage the brain on its own terms, again, using the brain waves, so the delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, to talk to the brain, and more importantly, get the brain to talk to itself in more functional patterns. So we can restore brain function quite quickly. So our clients probably see the biggest bump in the first weeks and months from the audiovisual entrainment, where we're taking function that's still there and we're just restoring it. Then the helmet is a little bit more long-term physiology. That's a little bit more about addressing some of the disease states and changing those. And then the other device is the nasal laser, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's 2 lasers that you stick up your nose. There are also 2 lasers that you put in your ears. So we have ear lasers and nasal laser. And this is just to put red light into the nose, which we do that because the nasal membranes are very thin. All the blood goes through your nasal passageways. About every 5 minutes, you get a circulation of all the blood will pass through. So we get to irradiate all the blood in the body numerous times in a 30-minute treatment. So that's good for all those reasons of mitochondria and nitric oxide and all of those. But also we get, as you put the nasal laser the light goes up into the brain, it passes through the eyes. So this is one of our treatments for eye-related conditions, but then it ends in the brain. And so where the helmet is going to get light down on the cortex on the top of the brain, the nasal laser brings light up onto the bottom of the brain, where some of the really important structures affected in neurodegenerative conditions live. So we've got our hippocampus and our amygdala there. And so being able to get light on the bottom of the brain, again, turns out to be very helpful for a whole set of symptoms related to the condition. And then what we ask people to do is 2 30-minute treatments a day. So roughly a treatment in the morning, treatment in the evening, where they're doing the helmet, the glasses, the headphones, the ear clips, the nasal lasers, all at one time. And they can be watching TV or eyes closed, taking a nap. It's a very, once you get used to the technology, it's a very simple, relaxing treatment. So we don't really have any problem with compliance. People like it. And the biggest driver of compliance, people doing it, is they start to get better. And that becomes a big motivator.
Okay,
Yep.
wonderful. Well, how do people start to work with you if they're interested in this? What's the process? I know so many doctors that they're 6 to 9 months out to get in to see anybody, which is just such a struggle.
Yes. Yeah. So you had mentioned earlier the Cerebral Fit. So Cerebral FIT. So cerebralfit.com. And there at that on our website, people will find my direct email, my direct phone number. They'll find a direct link to my online schedule. We offer a free 15-minute consult. If somebody's just wondering, are they a candidate? We can have a conversation and just talk through just kind of at a high level, are they a good fit for our program? I offer a 45-minute consult that lets us have more time to get into kind of the backstory, what are the related health conditions, help me kind of formulate a treatment plan, walk the person through what a prospective treatment plan would look like and what the costs associated would be. And then they can make a decision. Is that something that they want to do? And if it is, then typically what'll happen is I'll put together a suite of devices. Maybe it's what I talked about, the Cerebral Fit Complete, or maybe in one person's case, they're like, well, I don't want to do that one. I just want to do this one. Great. Okay, here we go. Pack that up, ship it off. We hop on a Zoom call. I help walk through the setup of it, what their protocols are, how they're going to do their treatment. And then we just continue that kind of a relationship over time where they're able to text me, call me, email me. We can hop on a Zoom and go through what's going on. Do we need to tweak the treatment plan? And, presume that this is a chronic degenerative disease. So I just make the presumption the person's going to be working with this for the rest of their life. And we're going to tweak their protocol so that what they're doing in week 1, in month 6, in year 2 is fitted for where they are in their health. And at some point, hopefully it's less about the concerns of dementia and we're able to move on to other concerns that they have. And indeed, that does happen.
So are these devices something that can be shared within a family? Because I can see someone having maybe back problems and somebody else having immune system problems and someone else having dementia or a combination of those. Can these be shared and can there be plans made for the different parties to use the same equipment?
I love the way you're thinking. Absolutely. And I encourage the folks that I work with to do exactly that. Like they're making an investment, so we should put a price tag on this so people again have a sense of this. So the Cerebral Fit Complete is going to come in at about $4,500. The helmet alone is about $3,300. The audiovisual entrainment is going to be about $700. The nasal laser is going to be about $200. We have 7 devices in our lineup, but I would say the range is between $100 for our lowest cost device and $4,500 for the complete kit at the highest end, and then everything else kind of shuffles out in the middle there. We do a rental program, so people can just rent if they have either an acute condition or they just want to know, like, am I going to do this? Like, guy, this sounds kind of weird. This helmet, this blinking light thing, I'm not sure I'm going to do it. Just rent a kit, and if you don't like it, if you're just like, this is annoying, pack it up, send it back. That was easy. On the other hand, if you do like it, our rental can convert into a rent to own. And so the money you've paid for rent isn't lost. That can go towards the purchase. And so the rentals basically can be like a payment plan. So it can be an easy way for people to kind of manage the cost of it. So whether people purchase outright or do a short-term rental, options. But yes, so what I say is people, if we're thinking dementia and the treatment plan is 30 minutes twice a day, so that's an hour that equipment is being used by that person, there's 23 hours that it's available. So absolutely, everybody else in the house should use it, because the thing to keep in mind about these devices is they don't treat disease. They optimize health. So there isn't anybody who can't use more health. There isn't anybody who wouldn't benefit from having more energy and a more well-regulated nervous system. Right? We can take peak performance, athlete, CEO, student in school, peak performance, they're above average on every outcome, and we put them on the devices and they get better. Right? Like, so that's the thing I want people to keep in mind. This isn't about treating a disease. This is about peak performance. This is about optimizing what you have. And in that sense, there isn't anybody who wouldn't benefit from it. So, if it's a spouse, if it's, children, grandchildren, many of my clients who have the complete kit for dementia, they will, their grandkids will come over and they'll put the audiovisual entrainment on the grandkids because it helps with just psycho-emotional regulation, autonomic nervous system regulation, helps with focus and concentration, helps, kids again, just better behaved, but also better academic performance. So absolutely, I want, the devices to be used, and that can extend to caregivers. Right? So, the caregiving side is demanding, and having something that will put at least a little bit of gas back in the tank will help the person giving the care have more resilience, be able to show up with more to offer. That's nothing but beneficial for everybody involved. And so that could be family members, but even if you have paid help coming in, I would say absolutely allow that person to have 30 minutes to use the device, because what you'll get is a better care team. Mm-hmm. And that's just better. I mean, the whole household will run better if everybody involved is more well regulated.
Yeah. Well, and how refreshing to say, it's about optimizing health. It's not about disease. I mean, everybody, or not everybody, but most people hate going to the doctor, and it's just like, oh, what are they going to find now? And instead of, you're finding what they have and giving it a boost, that's a whole different outlook. Real quickly, do you have a story that you want to share? I know you shared a couple of them about the gal who really got you, involved with this, but do you have a story or two you'd like to share as well?
I would love to. Thank you. Yes. I mean, so the problem is I have too many, but I have a couple of favorites. Like one of my current favorites is a lady. She's 105 and lovely, lovely lady. She made a mistake of getting up and trying to go from one room to another on her own with her walker, but she didn't wait for her caregiver, and she fell, hit the back of her head, blood, ambulance, off to the hospital. And the doctor said, you're actually lucky. If this had happened to somebody half your age, this could have killed them. But in her case, because of age-related shrinkage, she had a lot more space in her skull. So the internal bleeding and swelling didn't actually have much of a negative effect on her. But it did leave her with pain, neck pain from the fall, pain in her head from the impact, but also probably something in the area of a concussion. So it had a profound effect on her short-term memory, which up until that point was pretty darn good. But post-incident, she could eat breakfast and then not remember what she just had for breakfast. And her short-term memory was basically gone. So in her case, we used one of our infrared light devices that we allowed us to treat both for pain, so we could downregulate her pain, but also treat her brain. And it didn't take long. It was within days. She was off her pain meds. She was no longer complaining of neck pain, no longer complaining of headaches, sleeping better. Her short-term memory came back, and now is basically where she was before the fall. And then something that wasn't anticipated but she was having some eye issues, just kind of a chronically weeping eye that was just bothersome mostly. It was affecting her vision, but mostly just bothersome. And that got better. And again, from our standpoint, not a surprise, but from the family standpoint, they're kind of astounded that this one near infrared light device was able to help with so many of their mother's concerns from this fall. So I just love, I mean, she's a sweetheart, but that she was willing to do just what has to seem like just utter like ridiculousness, that you're going to put this light on my head and it's going to help, but that she was willing to do it. And then obviously that we were able to help her improve her quality of life. So it's one of my favorite stories. That's she's under care now, and all of this is happening. But one of my favorite dementia stories is a lady, probably something like 75, who by the time I was called in was quite progressed in her condition and did not do much from a functional standpoint. It was kind of bed, chair, back to bed again. And that was pretty much her day to day. And so we started her with the Cerebral Fit Complete, and could just tell, like, week by week, seeing her come back to life. And her husband was her primary caregiver, and he was great, so supportive. He did all the treatments along with her. But he would text me, in the beginning, he would text me weekly and just say, oh, she got up on her own today. She got up and got dressed and came down to breakfast. She got up and got dressed and came down and made breakfast. And just this amazing return to life, to their normal pre-dementia life as a couple. And this, her kind of getting her function and autonomy back allowed him then to leave the house and go back to working and managing the business. But it also, they, like, one of the texts just, made me cry. It was, they went out on a date, and the next day he's like, oh man, it's like 5 years, we've not been on a date in 5 years. And we went out, and she picked the place, she ordered her own meal. When we were done, she wanted to go for dessert. She never wants to go out, but if we go out, she doesn't want to stay out. Went out for dessert. Then after, on the way home, she's like, oh, we haven't visited with friends, could we stop at their house and just visit for a little bit? And they did. And it was like old times. And it's been just a very, very sweet story. She's about 2 years into treatment and doing great. I mean, driving again, going to the kids' hockey games, going out golfing with her friends. I mean, it's just been such a remarkable story. But again, you get me going on this and I could just keep going. I mean, there's a CEO who is in danger of getting pushed out of his business. The board was going to vote him out because of his dementia. And I would say fast forward a year and the business is doing better than ever. He is back to a self from 40 years ago. He's cycling. He's just enthusiastic about life. He's just a go-getter. A gentleman with Parkinson's who spent 7 hours a day in bed with tremors and needed full-time care. We were able to get him back to no tremors. He could get himself up, get dressed, navigate the house, basically take care of himself. And then that freed up his wife so that she could get her life back and get back with her girlfriends and go play bridge and go out for lunch. And just a remarkable story. I mean, he was 94 years old, but he wasn't done yet. Like he still had more life in him, and we were able to get him back, that level of function.
Wow. Those are really cool stories. And I mean, just very powerful, and I've heard about light therapy for, well, gosh, years. I mean, I've been in this realm since 2009, and I would say probably 2010, 2011, I started hearing about it, but it was, everyone would say it's just so hard to get out to the public to because it's not the typical medical model and things. And I would imagine this is private pay versus covered by insurance. Is that correct?
Correct. It is.
Okay.
We all of us in the industry would like to see that change, and the beginnings. I mean, it was just before we got on the call here, talking with a CEO of a company who's bringing a product to market, who they're just starting the FDA clearance process, which they feel very comfortable that they will. and that will put them in a position for beginning to start the third-party payer or the insurance side. There's some other companies and devices that have started, clearing those hurdles and are available. So it's just in its infancy from a third-party payer side, but that's going to continue to grow because all of the evidence shows the efficacy. Like that's the thing. There's no shortage of evidence. I think one of the slides we didn't show, but one of my favorite slides is just since 2022, right? So a little more than a year and a half. There's 13,000 papers, studies on photobiomodulation. So just on light therapy. So 13,000 in the last year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's mountains of evidence to show efficacy. Like that's for anybody who's looked at the research. That's not a question. The only question is the people who've never looked at the research. Well, then they always say, "Well, is there any research? I doubt this works." And it's like, well, go and read like 100 of the 13,000 studies, and I think you'll be persuaded. So yeah, it's settled science from that standpoint, but now it is really a public education campaign. It is getting doctors. Like one of the things that just frustrates me to no end is in our macular degeneration clients that can have somebody who has maybe a new diagnosis or very progressed, either way. But they come in for treatment, we treat them, they get better, whether it's complete resolution, such that there's no sign of diagnosable disease, or it's significant improvement, right? Because it's not, we don't always get complete resolution. We get what we get. We say, slow, stop, reverse. We never know what person is going to get the slow, the stop, or the reverse, but that's kind of our mantra. So you would like to think that the optometrist or the ophthalmologist who's seeing their patient's vision come back, that they would want to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, like, how did you do that? Like, this is impossible, but my patient can see now. Zero, like 100% of zero doctors have ever reached out, even when the patient is saying, look, will you please call my provider and talk to him about what he's doing, because I think he could help your other patients. Nope, none. It is astounding to me that even when the doctor sees it in their own patient, they're uninterested in it.
Yeah, it's a very, and this is me being an outsider, but it's a very manipulated system from what I see. And there's a lot of fear in terms of, if I refer this and it's, everyone else doesn't agree to this, or it's not kosher, what's going to happen to me? And am I going to get ostracized in the industry?
Yes.
All those things are very, very real. Well,
They
this has been fascinating. We need to wrap up here. We've been talking with Guy Otashar with the Cerebral Fit Center, and just amazing the stories that you've told and the science behind it. Again, in the show notes, there are lectures and videos and research papers that you can refer to as well, that he's pulled together. So I would just, really ask our audience to be a giver of hope, like, click, and share. There are people that we all know that are dealing with issues that they don't always share with us. Some of them we know, but not everything. And maybe this could help. And, cost you no money, very little time. And if you're in need yourself, reach out to them. Again, contact information is all there. You can go to cerebralfit.com, or you can call 866-953-4325. And you can also reach out to Guy by email at godashar at cerebralfit.com. Again, thank you so much for your time. This has just been an eye-opening discussion, and I'm so glad that we connected.
Thank you, Lori. It's been a delight chatting with you.
Thank you. And again, for our listeners, don't forget to check out alzheimersspeaks.com for our free educational resources, as well as going to Dementia Map, our global resource directory. We'll see you next time, everyone. Bye now.